Welcome to the Sunset Station Sportsbook Sports Betting Spotlight for the Las Vegas Review-Journal 32 for 32 series of NFL previews. I'm joined by Bernie Fratto, radio personality, BernieFratto.com, and Chuck Esposito, Sunset Station Sportsbook Director. With Chuck, it's great to just sense that football is here, and you can feel the excitement in the book.
You clearly can, Matt. This past weekend with the first full week of games, people are walking around wearing their team caps and T-shirts. You could just feel the buzz, the electricity, the hype in the room. It's great. After 6 weeks of baseball, only baseball, believe me, our industry is awfully glad football's here.
I bet. Everybody comes to life this time of year, Bernie. Adrian Peterson was the guy who carried the Vikings offensively last season. Workhorse, 327 carries, which is really an insane number. 1,485 yards, led the league. What do you expect out of Peterson and that Vikings offense this time around?
Well, the Vikings offense is going to have to improve, Matt. They were 16th overall last year, 29th in yards gained, but they still dethroned the Packers and won the NFC North, and save for a 27-yard missed field goal by the Blair Walsh Project, they'd have won a playoff game. I do like Teddy Bridgewater. They bring in Laquan Treadwell, but let's face it, Mike Zimmer, he's a defensive guy. He's turned them into an attacking defense over the last couple years. They've got great defenders on all three levels, including Harrison Smith, probably the best free safety in the game. So the Vikings' fifth-ranked defense will probably carry them. Schedule a little tricky. They've got Green Bay and Carolina in the first 3 weeks, but they always finish strong. By the way, for what it's worth, in the last 5 Decembers, the Vikings are 17-3 in December. So I look for the Vikings to be very good this year and very aggressive defensively.
All right, they move into a new stadium. Vikings 11-5, won the division last season. Fifth in the NFL in scoring defense, 18.9. I like you mentioned Harrison Smith. I thought he was a great player in college, and kind of the leader of that Vikings defense. Mike Zimmer, what's your impression of him, Chuck? Because this guy, I think a lot of people are starting to say, hey, he's on the verge of being an elite type of NFL coach.
Long overdue from getting a head coaching job, and love the style of play that he brings. It's obvious that he's a no-nonsense type of coach. The players buy into the system. He went into a team that he had a lot of young talent to build with. I think now they have to kind of maybe take the reins off Teddy Bridgewater a little bit, like we talked about with Matt Stafford earlier. Let Bridgewater, let's see what he can do. He's got the weapons now, I think, in Diggs, and they draft Treadwell and Charles Johnson. He's got AP that we know is getting a little bit older. He's got McKinnon behind him now. They've got that defense. They go into a new stadium. And if not for Blair Walsh, still a little bit of my thunder, I mean, God, if you're a Viking fan, you think about that game, and it's just a head-scratcher going into this season. But I think they're a very good team, but I really like Mike Zimmer a lot. I think he's one of those coaches that demands the respect of his team. He paid his dues to get to that spot, and he's got a young, aggressive team that kind of echoes what Mike Zimmer's all about.
Of course, the architect of the great Cincinnati defense.
Correct.
You're right. They bring 21 starters back, Matt and Chuck. And they bring over Alex Boone, great offensive guard from the San Francisco 49ers, to help protect Teddy Bridgewater. Bridgewater is going to have to elevate, but I believe he probably will, and I look for the Vikings to have a very good year.
Bridgewater was so conservative last season, partly by design, but that's just also his nature a little bit right now. 14 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions, not throwing the ball downfield much. They're going to cut this kid loose a little bit this season?
I think they have to. I mean, we talked about earlier, where do you put Cutler and Stafford in that division, but where do you put Teddy Bridgewater? I think he's got some really young, talented wideouts, Matt, that they can take that next step. And now that you've drafted Treadwell, Patterson can go into that role of maybe Devin Hester. I mean, he was arguably one of the best return guys in the league when he came into the league, and they wanted to make a receiver out of him, and he just didn't take it to the next step. Now, what a weapon to have him returning kicks and punts, and even being that guy who comes in as a fourth wide receiver for reverses and to create some havoc with the defense. He's got the weapons there. Bridgewater has to take the next step for me for Minnesota to be another playoff team.
Well, Minnesota, right, but Minnesota does have the coaching, the talent, and the depth to be a playoff team again. I've got them going 10-6. I do think Bridgewater will elevate. His first couple of years, the only quarterback who's done better than Teddy Bridgewater, actually they're almost identical, for Minnesota, was a guy by the name of Warren Moon.
All right, Vikings 9-5 to win the NFC North. Packers 5-9 favorites. Win total at Station Casinos 9.5. Over on that is -145. Chuck, what do you project as the Vikings record?
I'm gonna say they go 9-7, Matt. I think they have a little bit of a tougher schedule. I think there's a lot of pressure on Teddy Bridgewater too. I think he's really got to elevate and take it to the next step. I think it's going to be right around that 9 or 10, but I'm going to think that they go under this year.
Some food for thought. I do think the Vikings go 10-6, but I think Green Bay does win the division. Chuck, you alluded to it earlier in our other segment on the Packers. Barring injuries, the Packers are going to be right there. Two things I look for, guys, in a Super Bowl contender: a franchise quarterback and a pass rush. Green Bay has both. Minnesota's just beneath them. Why do I like Teddy Bridgewater over Matt Stafford? Because he finds ways to win situationally where Stafford hasn't.
All right, for Chuck Esposito and Bernie Fratto, that's a sports betting spotlight on the Minnesota Vikings.